Hello, movie and entertainment fans, and welcome back to the Calvin Cam podcast, where we tackle all sorts of topics in the film, television, and video game world. I'm Calvin, and today we have another breakdown and review episode for HBO's The Last of Us. So let's gather ourselves here for a second, because we are about to get into episode 5, Endure and Survive. Episode 5 was another nearly perfect episode of television, and it was probably one of the most dreadfully anticipated episodes of the entire show for those of us who are fans of the game. And man, it was heavy. I've said this before, I've played the games many of times, and I know the story very well, but somehow I was just not prepared for this episode. And that was probably one of the most gut-wrenching, devastating episodes that I've ever seen in anything. To quote a friend of mine, how do they keep making it sadder? I am left completely destroyed by this show. For those of us who play the game, we were not ready for this. We knew that these moments were going to happen, but we were not ready for this. Me and my partner watched the show, and we both looked at each other like, I don't know if I could watch this. And it was a really funny moment, but we were both in tears, and it was just you could feel the pain. I'm going to get into the episode and we'll go through it, and I will tell you the parts that I'm referencing. This is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the episode, go watch the episode before you listen to this review. We got to start the episode with a prologue 10 days prior, and we get to see the Hunters' revolution against Fedra take place and get a little bit more backstory on that group. What I mean is, for those of you who do not know Fedra, it was a government agency titled Federal Disaster Response Agency. After the outbreak happened, they used extreme measures like bombing cities and killing civilians and creating the heavily enforced quarantine zones that we've seen. In the past couple of years in the world of The Last of Us, the QZs have turned into fascist states, and Fedra enforced martial law. So like Bill said in episode 3, the government are all Nazis, which eventually, is going to make people not too happy, as we've seen happen in our real history. Sometimes revolutions produce governments that are just as awful as the regimes that they overthrew. Not all revolutions are bad, obviously, but some are completely built out of hatred, and hatred can lead down the path of the dark side with revenge. That's exactly what we get from Kathleen in this story, a character solely driven by revenge. The theme of the episode is definitely the loss of humanity and the question of one's morality. We first see Kathleen talk to the group in the beginning that is associated with Henry like a sinister elementary school teacher. She begins to instill fear in the people who betray the rebel group and tries to find out who knows where Henry is by offering them fair trial for betraying the Hunters. And eventually someone gives in and tells her that Henry is still in the city hiding out somewhere. He swears it's all he knows, and she believes him because she knows that informants are just rats, as she calls them. Then she walks away and gives the order to exterminate them and continues on her merry way toward revenge. And finally, we get to really meet Henry and Sam, as we get to see how they spent their time surviving those 10 days. Now, they changed Sam's character quite a bit in the show. He's younger and more reliant on Henry and is in more need of someone to look after him. Sam is also deaf, which he's not in the game, and in my opinion, this makes for more of a compelling story. It makes us care and become more connected to the loving relationship between these siblings. Henry and Sam hide out for 10 days before Joel and Ellie show up, and that's when Henry decides to make his move into leaving the city. We then pick up where episode 4 left off, have a small confrontation between our 4 characters before they show to each other that they are not enemies. Interestingly enough, if Ellie wasn't there, it probably would have gone down different. Ellie being there, I'm sure, reminded Joel of his promise and compassion that he had for Tess. It probably would have gone a lot different. Joel, Henry, Sam, and Ellie begin their stakeout and come up with a plan that leads to the tunnels. The tunnels were very eerie, and this part was like the game. We found an underground shelter that was big enough to house a community of people, and our protagonists wait till dark in the facility. In the game, there are infected down there, but not in the show. We get to see a relationship build between Ellie and Sam, and it's very, very cute because it captures the innocence that still lingers around the game. And that innocence helps characters like Joel and even Henry to step back and view that this world is worth having love. They come across a comic book called Savage Worlds, which is a straight reference to the game. You can find 14 collectible comics, and in the second game, you can collect cards from Savage Worlds. So while we're down here in the tunnels, Joel and Henry have a conversation about one's morality. Henry goes on to give a brief explanation on what happened and why they're wanted by Kathleen. Henry was the one who gave up the leader of the rebellion to Fedra. And the leader of the rebellion was a great, great man, as Henry said, the nicest person. And Henry still did this because Sam had leukemia, and the only way to cure him was to get the drugs that worked from Fedra. Fedra offered Henry a deal, and Henry gave up the leader, who's Michael. Michael was Kathleen's brother. So Henry has this moral dilemma of whether or not he is a bad person for doing something out of love. And this goes back to the overall message in this show, going back to love. Love sucks. Love's, unconditional and comes with a lot of responsibility. Now we get to move towards probably the best part of the entire episode. They emerge from the tunnels into the suburbs just outside the city. In the game, this part takes place during the day, and you do have the same house with a sniper shooting at you as you make your way around to flank him. Joel does this exact same thing as he tells Ellie to trust him, and he goes around. Again, another great example of building trust between Joel and Ellie. Joel now learning some more compassion when he finally reaches the sniper in the top of the building. He gives him a chance, but it ends poorly for the man. Joel then picks up the sniper as he hears over the man's radio that it is Kathleen and her group headed their way. Joel then begins to shout, "Run! Run!" And we get to see Ellie, Henry, and Sam kind of trying to make out what he's saying. And behind them is an arsenal of vehicles heading down the street and running through anything in their path, like cars, debris, etc. Joel then tries to protect them by popping off shots with this newly acquired sniper rifle and is firing at one of the main trucks. He eventually hits the driver, and the truck goes crashing into one of the buildings, which causes a major explosion and lights up our scene. Kathleen and her group get out of their vehicles and start combing for Henry and Sam. And finally, when they get close enough, Henry gives up their position and offers Kathleen, "Look, just leave them alone and I will come out." And Kathleen, of course, being the heartless person that she is, tells Henry, "You know that I cannot do that." The truck that crashed into the house then begins to sink, and it grabs everyone's attention, including Joel's, as everyone stares at this sinkhole that's going down into the ground. They can hear infected. Now, when I was watching this part, I'm like, okay, finally, we're going to get some infected. They're going to fight this. The infected are going to attack this group of people. I was expecting probably around 10, but we got 50 to 100. And it was crazy. They were going at it. Clickers, runners, etc. There was a little girl that chased Ellie. And it was just complete and total madness. It is a great moment. Please go watch this episode because this part is insane. Joel starts firing at infected, trying to protect Henry, Sam, and Ellie, mainly focusing on Ellie. And then we get Moto coming out of the ground. Big boy over here just bashing people left and right, a bloater. And what's really cool about the bloater is he actually does the death animation that's done in the game where he grabs Joel. Like if you mess up in the game and you die, there's a little animation that happens where the bloater grabs Joel by the face and like rips his head apart, which happens to Kathleen's right-hand man. And the little girl clicker that had tried to attack Ellie in the car jumps up on her, kills her. Our heroes then escape and meet up at a motel to rest for the night. Sam and Ellie and Joel and Henry, each in separate rooms, keeping each other company. We get a beautiful interaction of innocence between Sam and Ellie, and it is so sad. Sam reveals to Ellie that he had gotten bitten, and Ellie, realizing this, cuts her hand open because she tries to be so hopeful in a moment of fear, and giving this little boy hope by saying that her blood is the cure, and puts it over his bite. And she tells him, I'm getting teary about this right now. She tells him that she's there for him and she will stay up all night. It's so sad. Just one of the lines that he said is, do you think that when you've turned, you are still you inside? And it's heartbreaking. And then wake up in the morning and Ellie sees Sam and he's just sitting upright, and she goes to check on him and see if he's okay, and he's completely turned and attacks her. They fall into the next room. Joel freaks out and like goes to kill Sam because he's infected now, and Henry shoots at Joel and he's pointing the gun, and you could just see Henry's face. You could just see everything on his face. Sam was Henry's entire purpose of living, and all of it is gone in an instance. Like nothing Henry did up to this point even mattered. Selling out a man, getting him killed to give his brother a longer life, only to have it be taken away and have nothing of matter every decision he's made. And then Henry kills Sam, and it's just the most devastating thing because you could feel it. And then Henry takes his own life. Joel and Ellie then bury them and move on towards Wyoming. And Ellie writes on Sam's little book, I'm sorry. This episode was a masterpiece. I absolutely loved it. Bill and Frank's episode, yes. This episode, yes. Please keep delivering these episodes. As much as I hate it because of how much they make me cry and how much emotion they bring out of me, I can't tell you how amazing these episodes are because they're just perfect. This is exactly what a video game adaptation to a show needs to be. And they are just nailing it time and time again. I hope that other shows that are going to be coming out here that are adapted from video games really pay attention to the groundwork that The Last of Us is laying down. And that's going to conclude our episode for The Last of Us episodes 5. I'm kind of at a loss of words, honestly. I replay the episode in my head over and over, and it's just a gut punch, man. It's just a gut punch. And I've watched it about 2 or 3 times now. Well, like 2.5. Because I keep watching that whole last half of the episode. I know why I watch the saddest parts. Because they're just so beautiful and they're so beautifully made. Great job, HBO. Great job, Neil Druckmann. Great job, Craig Morzan. Great job, Daddy Pascal. I'll leave on that note. So we'll catch you next week for episode 6, right? Take care. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening into the Calvin Cam podcast. I am so incredibly grateful for all of you listeners out there. You can find me on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon, etc. And I also have a YouTube channel that I upload to. So go check me out. If you want to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I also have those, the Calvin Cam. So check it out. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you soon.